Hello and welcome. My name is Annie, and today I'm going to give you 5 tips on how you can get closer to God. Tip number 1 is talk to God. If you have a friend and you don't talk to them, you're not going to get to know them, are you? And or be friends. So it's really important to talk to God. So I suggest when you wake up in the morning that you say some prayers before you get up and out of bed. So think of God as soon as you wake up and just say good morning to your Father in heaven and thank Him that you have woken up and you have another glorious day before you. And maybe just go through a couple of the things that are going to happen in your day and ask God to help you with those things through the day. And if you know any prayers, the Our Father or Hail Mary or Glory Be or any form of prayer, you can just say that. So it's quite quick and then you're well started for your day. And of course, last thing at night is another excellent time to talk to God and to do a similar thing at night, to go through your day and just bring all the things that happened in your day to God. And especially things that didn't go so well, you can ask Him to help you with them. Perhaps you had a difficulty with a friend or a quarrel at work or something like that. So just bring those things to God and ask Him to help you with that situation and to bless anybody that you might have had a little argument with. Also remember God at little times during the day. You can just say small little prayers like, I remember you, Lord, thank you for this day, thank you for the earth, thank you for anything. Just try and talk to Him during the day as you would a friend. Try and think of God beside you all the time because He is with you all the time. So that's the first tip, talk to God. My second tip is listening. It's very important to listen to your friends. You can't just do all the talking. So make time for listening. How do we do that? Great way to listen to God is through the scripture, because God is alive in the scripture. His word is alive. So read a few lines of scripture, and I would recommend to start with the Gospels, what Jesus said, what Jesus taught, and also the Psalms are another really good source of reading. So just read a few lines and concentrate on reading them a few times and let it go into your heart. It's better than reading a whole long chunk, because that won't go into your heart really. That's more like reading a story. So just a few lines, a few times, let it go into your heart and sink into your heart, and you'll remember it and God will be with you. So also after scripture is a good time to be silent as well. We need silence, allowing God to speak to us. So just maybe a few moments, maybe 2 or 3 minutes to start with. You can always increase that time afterwards. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but you just be quiet and ask God to speak to you after you've finished reading the lines a few times. And this always brings peace and joy. So that's the second tip. The third tip is to see God in your neighbour. God said, love thy neighbour as thyself, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I'm sure none of us want to be treated badly or have arguments. So just remember that with your neighbour, and just try to help them out if they need helping out, and just be charitable, really. 6 of the commandments are to do with loving our neighbour and respecting our neighbour, so it's very important. And the 4th tip I'm going to give you today is to keep the Sabbath holy. That's a command of God. So in the Old Testament, the Jews kept Sabbath from Friday evening until sundown on Saturday evening. And as Christians, we keep the Sabbath day on Sunday because that's the day that Jesus rose from the dead. So that's our Sabbath day, really important. So try and find a church, a Catholic church near you, and find out the Mass times. There's usually at least 3 a day, and also one on Saturday evening, the Vigil Mass. And go along to Mass. It's only 1 hour a week. That's all God asks us to do, 1 hour a week. And there you will learn all about God through the scripture readings and through the praise and worship of God. And you will have fellowship with other Christians, and you'll be able to make friends and ask questions and learn a whole lot more about God. And the 5th tip is knowledge of God, because you want to know your friends, and we want to know about God. It's hard to know God if you don't know anything about him. So that's we find out about him through Mass, through the scriptures, through talking to others, and through prayer. So all these tips we've been talking about all come to the knowledge of God. So just increase your knowledge of God and obeying the 10 commandments, because God gave us those commandments for a reason, because they're good for us. That's what we need, and that's what we need to get to heaven. This life is a pilgrimage, and we're on pilgrimage to get to heaven. And not everyone is going to get to heaven, so it's really important to get to know God, because Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and he's the only one that can get you to the Father and to heaven. So let's just have a quick recap of those 5 tips to get you closer to God. Tip number 1, talk to God. That's prayer, early morning, late at night, and during the day when you can. Tip number 2 was listening to God through scripture and meditating a little on the verses. Tip number 3 is to see God in your neighbour and be charitable. Tip number 4 was to keep the Sabbath holy and get to church on Sunday, get to Mass. And tip number 5 is knowledge of God, which encompasses all these things. So I hope that's been really helpful for you today, and I ask God to bless you and your families, and see you next time. Thank you for listening.